Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. So on the show today, Joseph Bartz. So Joseph has been recommended to me, and I've been watching his YouTube videos for the last couple of days, and it's pretty diverse. So he's a hard character to introduce, I would say, because it seems just to be about the sort of holism of living, everything from moving to farming and learning and all sorts of stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into. So yeah, Joseph, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mark.
And what was the beginning of your journey with the body? How did you get interested in the body specifically?
I would say I was never uninterested. So, basically like from being a child, from there just went on like first some track and field, and then went into martial arts, and from there into parkour. So overcoming obstacles in the city or in nature. And this is what really like caught me. Yeah, there I really started to spend a lot of time moving around and also researching and trying to figure things out. And from there, it opened more and more and more with time.
So just to place you for listeners, was this somewhere in Germany? You were doing the martial arts and the parkour. This is where you grew up?
Yeah, in a small town called Rostock. Actually, not so small. It's like 200,000 people living there, and it's at the Baltic Sea. Yeah.
And how did this kind of become your life?
So the parkour caught me so much, like much more than the martial arts before. I liked the martial arts, and it was some Japanese, very traditional stuff. And then I practiced this also at home and stuff, blah, blah, blah. But the parkour caught me in a different way. And I felt how it really became such an integral part of my life that there was no question really about it. Like it was just happening by itself. I was thinking about being outside and moving around the whole time. And I had some days also where I skipped like the first lesson in school to go outside and train. Or I had a few moments where this became more important to me than what's happening in school. I just felt very, very deeply in love with this.
And this idea of being in love is interesting to me. I was watching a video of yours on practice, and someone had asked a question like, how much should I practice? And you kind of took it apart and said, well, what do you mean should? I mean, what does that mean? For what? And then this idea of if you love something, you kind of naturally put the practice in, right? It's just something that naturally happens. Like you're thinking about it in the morning when you wake up, you're skipping school. There's that kind of the love and the obsession just leads to a certain level of excellence.
Yes.
Yeah. And it seems like you're pretty thoughtful on the subject of practice generally. And that's something we share. I'm working with students to help them develop a practice to develop themselves. It might be a martial arts practice or a dance practice or a yoga practice. And it seems like that's often sort of practice is often either done unconsciously or done within the normal kind of mindset that our culture has given us as to what practice is. But I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about practice.
Yeah. So what I notice is that many people are not 100% sure themselves why they practice, actually, I would say. So I often feel it is very useful to talk with the people about it. What are different ways of practicing and different reasons? And this video where I talk about how much should I train or take it as a departing point to talk about it, is one example of it where I felt like people ask questions like this: how much should I train? But there is actually many questions before that, like why do I actually? What do I want to? What am I doing actually? Why am I doing this? And this idea of should I think is also very interesting, and I try to explore it with people. And I had some interesting moments where I told people, hey, I'm not telling you today what you have to do, what you need to do, but I will be here and you decide, and then I can help you. And that can be interesting because sometimes people realize, actually today I need this and that. And it can be something completely different from what they were preparing themselves to do when they're coming and they think, okay, we are doing this and that. And that's something I can do here in the school where people stay for longer, and I can do these things with them that I cannot do so well in a seminar that is just a few days, where we can go to these deeper layers of what is actually important for the person right now. And it's a bit of a play, like between me really giving things in a way that is like a no question ask way, where it's is now we are doing this all together. And then the moments where it's more decided by the people by themselves, because both has its value. And that's the exploration. When to do which, and so on and so forth.
And it can be that kind of top down or bottom up approach, kind of. I mean, even something as simple as going to the gym, it can be like cognitively, right? I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week for an hour. And then there can also be the kind of body listening, like I just kind of needed another day off last week. I was like, my body was just like, nah, you're not going to the gym today. You need to have a sleep in instead. That like listening to the body, like, and what am I curious about? Now I can have a regime within the gym, and the language is quite fascistic when we talk about like an exercise regime, And then you go, I'm going to do biceps, then triceps, then quads. But then it's like, well, what am I actually drawn to that day? What's going to be fun for me? What's intuitive for me? And that's just within a very narrow boundary of sort of muscular exercise.
Yeah. And I feel like it's very dependent on the individual, but also on the time. Like I know also for myself that I have times where it's just all intuitive, and I want it to be all intuitive. Like I wake up in the morning and then I see what will happen today. And there are other times in my life where I feel like, okay, now I create a clear structure that I want to follow the best that I can. And I feel very like happy with that. And it's changing also with the seasons. For example, for me, it feels the summer very different than the winter.
Yeah, and getting up early in the summer's a hell of a lot easier for going to the gym, or, I quite like meditating in the dark of winter where I naturally sort of go internal. So I can see what you mean about seasons. And, there is something as well in kind of surrendering, having a plan, or surrendering oneself to a teacher or a week of practice, or going, I'm with the fighting monkey guys for 2 days. I'm just, unless something's immoral or going to damage me, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to give myself to that for a couple of days. And then some, there's I guess there's a fear in just kind of being purely intuitive, that there's this fear of not having self-discipline, or like, most great musicians do get up and just do the scales every day, right? They might hit 3 or 4 hours of, that's not necessarily intuitively what they feel like, but they've got that kind of discipline to do it. So some dance between these two things, it's like the liberal and the conservative, often strikes me as healthiest.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it, because this morning I already had like a online meeting with my online students, and together with the people that live here in the school at the moment, and we talked about the book called Peak. It's from Anders Ericsson. That's a scientist that has heavily researched learning and is quoted in all sorts of books. Like I read so many books already where he was quoted. And he's talking a lot about musicians also, and this discipline of the musicians, and that many musicians told him in his research that they don't enjoy the practice, but they do it for the purpose that they know they want to be musicians. And, they love to be musicians and they love what they do, but when they practice, it's not necessarily like it's not fun for them to practice, because they also understood that the practice in there, it's like the best, like really top level musicians that play in orchestras. So that it's for them, it's important to have this sort of practice that is actually not very enjoyable, but it's to get better and better and better. And for me, the interesting thing about the book is that on the one hand, it is very, very practically useful, his research for me and the students. And on the other hand, when we talk about this book, when I talk about this book with the people, then I always mention that this is a certain particular way to look at things. Like it's very goal orientated in a sense.
I mean, I guess it's angled at performance if it's around musicians, which is a particular thing, isn't it? You know,
exactly. Yeah.
It strikes me the domains are fairly different. Like a sports person spends 90% practicing and 10% performing. A business person may do almost no practice, and they're either practicing on the job or not at all. And then it's like there's different kinds of practice, right? So like if it's practice with feedback, with a coach, just mindlessly doing something doesn't seem to be particularly beneficial to me. Just kind of like doing the hours, you know, like it seems to me that I have to at least be paying attention and having one or two things to focus on to improve. Like if I was to want to be a better podcaster, for example, maybe one thing I do is I listen back to the podcast and I say, that question wasn't great, or you interrupted there. You know, there's one or two things I'm sort of listening out for. So I guess like this word practice isn't one thing.
Yeah. It's not enough to show up actually, because sometimes we say, showing up that's the most important thing. It is, because if you don't show up, nothing is happening at all. But it's also not enough to show up. Maybe for the beginner, many things happen. Yeah, if you go the first time to whatever, let's say martial arts class, and you just have zero experience, and of course, whatever you do, like something is happening because there's nothing is there. But the better you go, the better you become, the more there is this similarity to what I just said with the musicians, that, and what you just said, like with their attention, with getting feedback and so on and so forth, if you're interested in improving. But on the other hand, it also doesn't need to be that you go to the gym, for example, or anywhere to improve. Like you could also go to the gym because it's a social thing for you, or because you just like the feeling of sweating and working out, and maybe you don't care about like getting better at any numbers and so on and so forth. And that's also something I try to talk about with people, that there are all these different reasons, and these different reasons have different approaches, and the different reasons also create different things. And especially in a society where we live in, that seems to be, for me, it seems to be quite goal orientated, although maybe now it becomes a bit more, there's a bit of a rebalancing to this.
Yeah, I find there's this culture and counterculture, right? And culture seems to be too goal orientated to me to be healthy, but counterculture for me often seems not goal orientated enough. Like I got a lot of hippie friends that I just wish would make some more money, or get, you know, do what they want to do in the world. You know, like get some results, dude. Don't just play. And then I see the mainstream world, and I think there's no space for play there. And then, of course, the irony or the paradox for me is that the play can really enhance our goal orientation. Like it's kind of like the German football team versus the Brazilian football team, maybe the two best football teams in the world historically. But the Brazilians have devoted themselves to play, like as their main principle, and that's made them amazing. And then the Germans have dedicated themselves to goal orientation, literally, and that's made them amazing. So there's like this different, and both of these are two top teams. So it seems to me that this play path can actually aid success, but not if one is just completely immersed in it without any sense of like, the Brazilians still have to score a fucking goal after they do all the cool tricks. So there's some sort of play or paradox between these two, I think.
Yeah. It's about the balance, no? Like between these things. Yeah, I observed something very similar, that some people just always go forward, and you get the feeling that it's too straight, like the line they walk is too straight, and there's nothing anymore on the side and can be problematic. And other people are just zigzagging around, and they also they feel that's very nice, but actually it's they also have these moments where they realize, I'm not getting anywhere, and this is also not making me happy to just zigzag.
There's something unsatisfying ultimately in not having any kind of goal orientation in life. And sometimes I feel sad or frustrated because it's like I just see like lots of really good people who aren't very successful, and like success matters, whether if you want to like end hunger in Africa, you want to be successful, right? At that, there's a goal there. So, for me, there's some kind of balance between the two, which is tricky. You mentioned you had a center. So is that in Berlin, or is that, because it looked kind of like in the countryside, right, when I saw pictures of it?
So it's very close to Berlin. It's also where I'm now at the moment. We call it the school, and it is like just tiny bit out of Berlin. Yeah, just 10 kilometers out of Berlin, basically.
Okay. And what struck me about it and sort of researching you, because at first I thought, he's a movement guy. Maybe I thought Rafe Kelly or one of my friends maybe introduced me to you. I thought, okay, he's a movement guy. And then I looked at some more stuff, and it seems, tell me if I'm wrong, it seems like you're combining movement work with cognitive work, but also crafts and also like growing vegetables. It seems like a very holistic kind of syllabus there.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting a bit to the core of the problem that I have at the moment, is that many people regard me as someone that is doing movement, but this is not how I see myself, actually. Like, what I'm trying to do is to give possibilities to people and figure out through time what they want to do. And the way that I use is to just give people lots of experiences, basically, metaphorically speaking, to give them a map to navigate, and from there to decide where do I want to go. And there is some things that I do, and there are 10,000 things we could do, but they're the things that I have more experience with, so I can teach it better than other things. And there are things where I feel like this is useful for people, and the movement, the physical practice is a big part of it. But as you already mentioned, there is things that you would regard more as cognitive, although it always is a bit of a, like, okay, this is more cognitive, this is more physical. But to categorize, it's helpful. Gardening, like to be outside. We do a lot of stuff that is sort of, you could say, Stone Age style, like old skills that have been lost, and experiencing this because it's very powerful. It has a very primal feeling. Like a typical example would be to make fire by friction. And when someone is doing their first fire by friction, something special is happening inside of the person. And you can see in the face, like in the eyes, there's something very special happening. Although today we sometimes disregard these things because we have technologies that make it unnecessary to do that. So I also look into these things that got lost, or that let's say it doesn't need to be done anymore from a pure functional perspective. And I would say the big thing, the underlying thing is philosophy about what we are doing here. So it always comes back to talking about fundamental things, and it doesn't matter if we practice in the physical training area, or if we're in the garden, or if we're in the forest doing things, or if we sit down and meditate and so on. So it's a really diverse practice, and what I care about is to provide this map, these possibilities, to help people find what they want to do, and also to give them this sense of, I think agency is maybe the right word. I'm not sure it's the right word, because in German we have a similar word, but we use it completely differently. But I think agency is the right word. Like to have this feeling like you are able also to do something. Ableness, I also like to say.
Yeah. So for me, agency is a sense of choice and a sense of empowerment in the word. So it's like,
Yes.
like an agent's having a sense of agency in yoga might mean that you can, you're willing, able, and allowed to like change postures or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. So So might be good word for it.
Sounds
or
good.
ableness. I like to
Ableness.
use the word ableness, to be able to do all sorts of different things, and this gives you the feeling of, hey, I'm in the world, not just sort of like dropped into the world, but I'm actually like part of the world, and I can also change things, and this is very empowering feeling.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, which is, for example,
go on.
For example, when you craft, which is something we do also a lot, like working with wood or cloth or clay or fiber. You do something, you hold it in your hands after, and you realize, hey, I have an impact here. I created something. And it's a basic lesson, but I think if we understand this basic lesson, then it can be very empowering and realize I can take responsibility for the world, basically for myself and the world around me, and I can change things, and I'm a part of this world, and I want to take this responsibility.
Nice. I'm really fascinated by how broad it is as well. I mean, my friend Rafe and I were kind of making a list of kind of basic fundamental human capacities, and we were saying like how many of these have been lost. Like okay, most people can't fight anymore, or they can't run, or very simple physical things like squatting. I'm like relearning this sort of very basic human capacity. And we started off with a little list from Ido Portal, which is kind of physical things. And then we moved it to slightly broader things. Like I was saying, look, like comedy and humor is a basic human capacity. And flirting and sexuality, this is a basic human capacity that will get lost if you just spend all day watching porn, and we are extending it to things that were embodied, but perhaps not simply physical. And then Rafe and I's conversation became, okay, where does this end? Because we're tool using creatures. So, like our ancestors were probably throwing stuff, definitely making stuff. Like, should I be able to make a pot? And I was starting to feel like slightly, watching your video as well, I started to feel slightly incapable, I was like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And that is a basic Stone Age capacity, some of those things. So it strikes me you're working with these sort of fundamentals of being human, sort of pre-civilization.
Yeah. And I got inspired also. I was on not a normal school, but a Waldorf school. I don't know if you heard about this.
Yeah.
So they also, I mean, it's not that they do Stone Age stuff, but they do a lot of development of these trades like crafting, and there's dancing, and there's playing theater, and there's music and so on. And I didn't always enjoy to go to school. Actually, the last years I really didn't enjoy it much anymore. But after I realized, I went through something very special that many people have not done, and I realized it when I started also to teach crafting. And the crafting teaching that I do is based on the one hand on what I learned from my wilderness teacher, Uwe, and in the school, in the Waldorf school. And because there we went through all sorts of things. Like we did 12 years of learning about all sorts of crafts. And it gave me this empowerment that, wow, I did all of this already once. So now if I have to get into this topic for any reason, maybe because of a practical reason, maybe I need to build something or repair something, I feel like I had this material in my hands already. I did something with it already. And I feel it's possible for me to learn that. And so when I started to teach crafting more, I realized so many people didn't have this experiences, and I have to explain things where I first thought don't have to explain them, but I have to explain how to use a saw, how to use a knife, how to use an axe. When we talk about like something,
there's people who have never chopped wood. I did a lot of gardening work when I grew up, and there was something about being in the soil and the earth, which I found very grounding. And, my mum's always grown potatoes and tomatoes and things. And I kind of have this fantasy, like if there's a civilization collapse, I'll just, go to my mum's and, dig her garden for her, and she'd tell me how to do it, and I'd do the hard work. And it would be like, this is some basic human shit. And I even have this sense of like, this could sound awful, but if I'm in Berlin or London, I see some kind of like hipster boy with his laptop, part of me thinks like I could run him down. He wouldn't be able to run away in those tight jeans. He wouldn't be able to fight me off. And how can he possibly feel secure as a human being or a man lacking those fundamental human capacities? There's something pitiable in that. I know this could sound sort of awfully predatory, but that's kind of how it arises in me. It's like a kind of instinct, like I feel kind of like I would like pitiful almost when I see a grown man that doesn't have some of these human capacities.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you can also argue from a different side. You can say, okay, we went this path of civilization, and we became more and more civilized, which means nowadays the likelihood, like in the Western world at least, to needing to fight is extremely low. Like
unless you're a bouncer or something. Yeah,
it's funny. You can say if you go to train fighting, the risk of injury is much higher than never going to fight, and maybe one time in your life you get punched in the face or something like this. Yeah, but it's still like less than what maybe happens if you go to...
you're going to get hurt if you train martial arts, whereas you could go your whole life. Exactly. In a way, we're the crazy ones, right? The kind of, maybe I should be spending more time learning computer programming and coding, because that's more like the skills of the modern age. And, it's a little bit insane to learn these kind of skills that we're almost never going to have to use.
Yes, so it's an interesting question also about the school system. Like for children, what do we want to teach them? Like, do we want to teach what we say this is needed later? Yeah, so probably it's a lot about computers and all this stuff, or teach them things that they don't necessarily need, maybe, or we think we don't need it. But then another question comes before: what do we actually need? Like, on which level? Like, do we just talk about working? Is school just preparing us for work, or for other things? Like, I feel very happy that I went to a school where I felt like actually it was not just about preparing me for the working world. And of course we did the usual stuff also, but I did things that I don't need them. Like, I don't need to be able to work with wood for my survival, to get money and go to the supermarket and buy stuff. It's not needed, but it worked on a different layer that feels like there is a need behind this, like
a human need. Like, I think it's those older skills get us better in contact with ourselves. Like, when I'm learning one of the more modern skills, like I'm learning search engine optimization, or how to market my latest podcast or whatever, I don't feel more in touch with myself. I don't learn about myself in the same way. And this is what the Japanese figured out when they kept the old fighting arts as do rather than jitsu, right? They said, look, there's guns now. We don't really need bows and arrows in war, but they help develop character better than the new arts. So that was their justification for keeping the kind of training of these things that were essentially outdated. And I think almost what you've done is almost taken that a step back further and say, okay, medieval isn't where it began. It began in Stone Age.
Yeah, and I guess that's also about the embodiment that you talk about. That is that these things are always embodied, like in comparison to like it's all physically, like these old things. Like, even if it is more meditative things, it has always this different feeling from things like you said, like being on the computer or and nowadays, like, modern things tend to go more and more to the digital. And I mean, there's even this idea of like transhumanism, for example, where people talk about, okay, maybe in 100 years, actually, we will be uploading ourselves to a computer. So there will be even no real physical self in the sense that we know.
Yeah,
today.
I think those people don't understand embodiment that are having that fantasy, because you can't upload yourself without a body, right? So it's a ridiculous. It's a sort of ghost in the machine fantasy. But my best friend's a carpenter, and I've known him since I was 3 years old. We're about to have our 40th birthday together. We have it's a pretty similar birthday, and he doesn't need to do embodiment because he spends all his day doing woodwork, and he's more in his body than I am as a professional embodiment teacher. And I think the difference between me and him as well is there's a sort of satisfaction for him. We're kind of making something and kind of going, there was wood, now there is cabinet. Like this kind of very visceral thing, which as someone who works with their mind, is a different kind of level of skill. There's a different quality to that. Though, maybe it's also just about working at different levels for different people. Like we were tripping on mushrooms once pretty hard, and he stood up and stoked the fire. And this was like magic to me. I couldn't stand up. I was lying on the couch, tripping really hard. And what I was able to do was say really clever, funny things. And he couldn't speak. And afterwards, we sort of contemplated it because it looked like the other one had like a magic power. Like I was creating words out of thoughts. And he was, he was actually looking after us physically by kind of keeping the place warm while we did that. And it was this, and his wife was making us tea and like loving us, and she couldn't speak either, but she could still love us. And it was like all three of us had this like magic power that the other one didn't have. But it was like he was working at the physical level, she was working at the sort of relational, emotional level, and I was working at the kind of cognitive level. But we were all creating something. And I didn't want to like belittle any of us. It was just an insight of like, oh, we all have these magic powers, and maybe that's just the way I'm set up, that I'm never going to be a carpenter,
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's very interesting. Sounds like a very interesting experience. Cool.
Well, it's cool. I mean, it seems like people have a fascinating time staying at your place, and I'm really tempted to come visit next time in Berlin. It looks like why do they come? Like I saw this video and there's people talking about their experience, but it's kind of vague, but they all seem really happy, Yeah. And it's like, what do you think brings them to come to do this weird thing that, they're not going to get a qualification or make a bunch of money from it afterwards?
Yeah, good question. Maybe because they have this sense that there is this map laid out here for them that helps them to make further decisions. And it's people from like all ages that come here. But I clearly feel that like there is the people that come that are young, and they feel like, I'm not sure yet what I want to do. And they spend some time here and use this as a help also. But there are also people that have the same thing, that are at a point where they want to relook at the map, I feel, And then, of course, for other people, it's not so existential. It's just having something in their life that again is maybe rebalancing their normal life. That is maybe very straightforward with their work, and they want to have this more open approach in their non-working time, and they come here to explore it. So
I can imagine it just looks like a great holiday. It's my idea of a good time. I can imagine going there for a few days just to relax and learn how to make a spoon or some shit, and jump around on the walls. And I can imagine it'll be just relaxing, getting back to those kind of basic skills and not worrying about marketing embodiment courses. Just something sort of simple, like I used to find this one. I did gardening as a job at the same time as I did a psychology degree. And I used to love the gardening as a sort of, it used to be like this sort of simplicity outside the cognitive complexity of studying at a university. Mm-hmm. And I think people are really, and I don't use this phrase lightly, dying for that now.
Yeah. It's really something that is happening now in society. Like things like this, like gardening, so many people now go to gyms, go to do this and this and this. It's really like something in society is there that, okay, we took something sort of away from society because we specialize so much, and we are not doing these basic things anymore that like our grandparents did more, or great grandparents, or so on and so forth. Like when people used to live much more in villages, and now most of us live in cities, and we just don't experience these things anymore. And then we search for where can we still do them. And it's a bit like you said with the guy that is like sitting and he sitting in this tight jeans and so on and so forth. That we live in an environment where we can do this, and it's not needed to run, and it's not needed to be able to do fight or something like this.
Do you think we should start a new sport of hipster hunting in Berlin? I think that could be just a great gift to the city. But I mean, actually, joking aside, the sort of hipster kind of vibe is they often do analog stuff as well. It's really common now for early sort of millennials to have these kind of crafty hobbies, like knitting has become popular again, which is like grandmother hobby, but it's sort of come back as a cool thing, something physical, something simple. And you'll often see people of that generation will have like one or two hobbies that are very analog and very sort of craft orientated. So, I mean, joking aside, I don't want to kind of, criticize all young people, but there does seem to be this nice reemergence of this urge for the craft, as well as, the fact that movement culture's suddenly become a thing. Like until I saw like Ido Portal's video like 5 years ago or something, there was only individual arts, and movement itself wasn't a thing. And now it's huge, it's absolutely huge.
Yeah. And I think like maybe not everyone, I'm not an extremist about it, like I feel like this is something for people that feel drawn to it, and other people they like to sit on the computer, and for them it's completely fine, and they feel very happy doing this all day and not having any of this like old skills that are a bit dying out and being like very specialized, and or in their free time they play computer games and something like this. And if they feel happy, for me, I would never go to a person like this and tell them, but you need to do this and this and that. But I'm really not an extremist in this sense that I feel if people come to me, then I give them my time, but I'm not going around and trying to convince.
Yeah, I mean, being evangelical is perhaps not the way to go. And I feel like there are a generation of people who may not realize what they're missing. Like I was really struck. I was looking at this guy yesterday, and I really had this sense of I don't think he knows what it's like to feel like an agentic, visceral, powerful man. I just don't like how many. I've got a young student in, let's say Scandinavia, because I don't want to be too specific, but a young student, and he's emailing me about watching a lot of porn, and he doesn't know anything different. He's grown up with porn. He's 20, he's at university. So he doesn't know what it's like to have a non-technological relationship to sexuality. And I said to him, well, why don't you, give it up for a month and see what happens? Like maybe it's great. I'm not, maybe I kind of look at it like junk food. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's probably not the best either to live off. Give it up for a month. And, I guarantee at the end of that month, he's not going to say my life got worse and I got more miserable. He's going to say, wow, I'm full of energy, or, my relationships with women have changed, but he hasn't ever had that as an experience.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with these things is that they are so always made so powerful, like junk food, for example. Yeah, it has this taste of, it's fatty and they're carbohydrates and it's salty and we just love it. Yeah, this taste. And we have to sort of like rationally realize, like many people, there are people that feel it, they feel this, something is wrong here. This is not wrong. But many people have to rationalize about it and say, okay, this is not going to be my main source of food. And in the internet, there is like so many things like that draw us in and where we can get lost in them. And I talked about this also a few times, and I did a few things about it and played with many things about how to use the computer and the smartphone and so on and so forth. And for example, I have like this dumb phone, you could say, like a 20 euro phone. I have an iPhone also, but when I can, and I try to do this as often as I can, I leave the iPhone here in the office. I try to finish all the work that I need to do, and then I'm taking the other phone because I want to be reachable for my girlfriend, because also we have a small son and so on and so forth. I want to be reachable, but I don't need to be reachable 24/7 for whatever. And it's enough if I'm in the office doing things. And that's a problem that we have today also in our society. And there's I like this thing that is called time well spent by sort of like a whistleblower, like Tristan Harris, he's called. What did he talk about? I think he worked for Facebook or something like this. And he wrote about how all the mechanisms work with it's like a slot machine. Yeah, you always go further and more and more.
Process, for sure. Like I've been in long-term recovery from addiction, and there's definite similarities. And there's those conscious choices, isn't there? Like taking email off your phone, or I downgraded to an old school electronic alarm clock just so that when I woke up in the morning, I didn't grab my phone. So I have a little plastic $5 alarm clock instead. Yeah. And my phone lives in my office, so I'm not immediately going for that in the morning, which I rather like that little shift. Or I found a way to make my iPhone black and white, so it's much, like you can see, like it's just much less appealing.
Yeah, I have the same.
It's like less sexy. Do you know what I mean? So my brain isn't like berries, candy. It's kind of just goes, okay, there's something functional. So I think how we make these choices is helpful. What are you most interested in right now? What's your kind of edge of, like, what's exciting you right now in your own practice? Or
this year is a lot for me about meditation and gardening, actually, also. Right. Because now that we have the school, it started in December, so we have it like now for like 8-9 months, and there was nothing here. Like there was this 1,000 square meters where we can do whatever we want, but there was no garden already. So where I live, there is a garden, but it's already there for 50 years because my grandmother prepared it. So that was very interesting for me to start from the beginning and see, like, okay, how do we start now? Actually, what are the best plans to start with, and so on and so forth. And that's super, super interesting for me this year. This may be my two main topics. And then I have a guy at the moment here that is very, very proficient in wrestling. He's in the school.
Okay.
So I take the opportunity to learn some classic wrestling, like the wrestling they do in the Olympics. Also this Greco-Romanian wrestling. Yeah, because this I never did. I did some BJJ.
It's very primal, isn't it? I always think it's almost like one of the most primal martial arts.
Yeah, like, for sure.
Man, body. It's sophisticated. It's hell of a sophisticated, but it's also the most basic art in a way. You can imagine cavemen grabbing each other and trying to throw each other around before they'd invented like wrist locks or something. It's
yes.
Well, that makes sense to me. I like that. I find there's almost so much, particularly doing this podcast or going to Berlin. I'm going to be in the Body IQ Festival in Berlin for listeners if they want to go to a cool somatics festival. There's a good one in Berlin. And there's so much stuff you can do. Like I'm in Brighton, or my Russian friends are saying, come and do Sistema with us tonight. And there's a yoga class I quite want to go to. And, and that's just in Brighton, let alone as soon as I've just discovered a new form of trauma therapy called NAM that looks really interesting, and they've got an online course. And I was doing craniosacral at the weekend and Feldenkrais before that. I mean, we're like abundant with the amount of stuff we can do. And everyone I interview, I'm like, I'm totally going to come and train with them, but that's impossible with the number of people. I mean, so it's like, what do we do in this situation? Is it just like what calls us? What do we feel? What is there an opportunity for? Like with this wrestler happens to be with you at the moment. Any thoughts on how do we navigate the diversity of practice these days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. Yeah. I think focus is very important if we try to actually get somewhere, like we talked in the beginning, like if we want to get somewhere. And there's a book that I always recommend that is called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And there he talks a lot about this focus, like to sort of like, he talks about writing, like to go into your room and don't be disturbed by anyone for a few hours and just write and have no connection to the internet and all this stuff. And but the ideas are very general, that if you want to get somewhere, you cannot do 10,000 things at the same time. So I guess it's often better to have the ability to say, okay, now I do this, like I just said, like this year is for me about certain things. And I have many other things that I would like to do. And some I can put a bit in, some less.
Yeah.
But I also need to see that if I do everything at the same time, like nothing is really
nothing. It's like getting married, isn't it? Or like choosing a few friends that you want to really devote time to. Or I'll do something for a year, because I feel like in a year, a few times a week, like I dance tango 3 nights a week for a year. And by the end of that year, I could dance tango, and I can still, 10 years later, I can still dance with a woman. It's great, But it's like that year was enough to kind of give me a decent chunk of it. And then I think after 6 months or a year, there's another decision point, which is like, okay, now the learning curve's really slowed down after a year. Do I want to keep with that for another 10 or 20 years? Or do I want to just put that aside as one of the things I've learned from? And for me, that seems to be the balance. Is the things that I try once, the things I do for a year, and the things that I devote myself to ongoing. And there's less and less things in each category, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there's also like, let me say like this, like I personally get drawn to this overview, like trying to do many different things.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't want to say that this is the way to go. And I realized for many people, it's not the best way to go, because it's so important for many people to develop a particular skill. My particular skill is to have the overview or to develop the overview. But for many people, it's in the end to develop a more specific skill. And there is a nice documentary called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. I don't know if you...
I love it. Yeah, it's great about practice. It's the Japanese are fucking obsessive. Like, but it's just so shows the beauty of just doing one thing with true excellence.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And he has this, at one time in the documentary, he has this moment where he says, like, you start to do one thing, or you choose one thing or your occupation, and then that's it. Like you go fully into it, and there's no question anymore about what am I going to do and so on.
Yeah, it's just a choice. Just like, okay, you get married and then you make the most of that, and that's who you're married to.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, because it is sort of the other side of what we have today, also, that we want to do so many different things, and there are so many different things. And like in relationships also, like it used to be like super common to stay with one person for your life, and nowadays, like, how common is it? Like, it's not so common anymore, like for people that are below 60 years old. And it's interesting to also see this point of view that Jiro has, that, okay, you just stay with this one thing and that's it, and you fully focus on it, and you don't like waste your time like looking around. And both make sense. Like, I really, for me, it's just being aware of all these different things and not saying like, you have to do it like this, or you have to do it like this, da 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 da. But maybe to sum it up, that because for me it's also a topic, this what we like, that I got better at developing, like I would call it the antithesis to the fear of missing out, like this fear of missing out. And I'm still searching for a good term, but at the moment I say like fear of too much, or consciousness of too much, that you realize, hey, I have enough things happening, and I'm still open for many things, but although I'm interested, I stay with this at the moment, and I have a lot of time. Like
well, it's
nowadays,
really a sense of gratitude and enough, and not, letting go of that addictive hunger is where I think it can go constantly. The latest sexy new thing that will be in fashion for a year or two, or, actually being, I think the other piece there is just commitment, isn't it? And going like our grandparents did with marriages, like, hey, unless this gets genuinely abusive, this is it now. And I'm going to devote myself to that, which is actually, and I'm glad there are people out there who are doing that with, say, traditional arts, who are preserving. I've got Aikido friends and they just want to preserve a lineage, and that's great. And there's other people that want to get to the very best at one particular thing, like Jiro. And for me, that approach can lead to an imbalance in life. So it's like, what am I in service to? Am I in service to the art or the goal, or actually to developing myself? And it seems to me that some balance between those two things is what develops the most rounded people, are people that have long-term paths and long-term commitments, like 20 years of yoga or whatever, but also who are still trying new things and bringing in new elements and, looking, hey, is this really where my growth is now? Because I mean, most somatic arts lead to very one-sided human beings if you just do it, with the degree that Jiro dreams of sushi. Like, how healthy is that? Like, his family life, his entire life is around it. And he's got a huge external success as a Michelin star restaurant and huge recognition, but he's not even able to enjoy that because he's so focused on what he's doing still.
Yeah. So for me, it's also about the balance. Like, there are always like extreme people like Gio, and these extreme people are able to do things that let's say more like someone with a more balanced approach is not able to do. Like, and that's very interesting. That's very, and I don't know the inner life of someone like Gio, so I cannot say anything about it, but I know that I want to show this balanced approach that might also enable people to go into more extreme, but with the awareness of, we can follow one thing for the rest of their life, or we can follow 10,000 things, and there is also balance in between. Because if I just follow one thing, then it might lead into like dogmatism and the problems that kind of come from this. And if I follow 10,000 things, then I might end up with nothing because I didn't focus on anything in particular. So like you said, like if I can find the balance, have my things to practice over many years, and at the same time be very open and not become like a stone, like a crystal that is hard. But yeah.
Nice. Well, unfortunately, we're nearly at time here. I've really enjoyed this, actually. I hope we get a chance to talk again. I'll give you a shout when I'm in Berlin in November. I think I'm back next. And
nice.
We're almost certainly going to be running a big course out of Berlin in a couple of years. And so I'll be coming there kind of increasingly often. So just to sort of shout out to all the listeners in Berlin to say to reach out to me. We're going to be doing embodied yoga there, and it's a course for coaches in a couple of years. So we're kind of building up to that. It just seems like there's a lot of interesting stuff, and the flight's a lot less brutal than going to Colorado or California, which seem to be the other big hubs of embodiment. So, and if honestly, I find Germans easier to deal with than Californians, but personal prejudice. So where can people find out more about what you do? Where should they go to check you out online? Do they have to go to your cave in the Stone Age mountains, or is there an online space they can look at?
Just my website, josephbartz.de. And I guess it's good also to check out the YouTube channel, because there I explain some things about the philosophy a bit more. So, but this can be also found through the website or just putting my name on YouTube. Yeah.
I found it helpful, the YouTube channel, and certainly, it kind of drew me in, engrossed me, and it's a little bit different, but I was like, I teach nothing. This is on your website?
Yeah.
Great. What a great thing to see as soon as you come online. And any closing thoughts about the body to finish up with, Joseph?
I think we are all, in a sense, we are always physically there. And although, like we said, like some people think we are going to be computer programs yeah, I think we're always physically, and not just zeros and ones.
Not just zeros and ones. Thank you for joining us today.
Cool.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodifacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodifacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodifacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.